And joining us at this time, we have a political scientist, Dr. Indira Rampersad, who's no stranger, of course, to the Observer. Pleasant good evening and happy Mother's Day to you.
Oh, thank you so much. You know, we're mothers and fathers to so many around.
Yes,
so
indeed.
I do appreciate this.
Yeah, well, you are welcome indeed. Always a pleasure to have you on. Let me ask you, there's some talk we did hear, of course, with the industrial judges from the industrial court. What say you to weigh in on that matter?
Well, I have had a concern about political personalities. And when I say political, people who are past ministers, former senators, holding positions in our courts, and particularly our specialized courts. So that would include Equal Opportunity Tribunal, the Tax Appeal Court, as well as the Industrial Court and the Environmental Commission. Those four bodies, the cabinet does have a say, but it becomes very, very worrying, and I've heard the unions complain when they have to go to the industrial court that the persons may not be entirely independent because they are the lay officers in particular, the lay judicial officers. So you have the chair, which generally appointed by the Judicial Services Commission. But the lay officers, the other judicial officers who sit there, they're not lay. They're actually qualified attorneys, judges, qualified in the law. But they are members of the bench, and when cabinet has to appoint them, they tend to become politicized. So there is a conflict of interest between the litigant and the tribunal. The tribunal, being perceived as a partisan. Now, justice must not just seem to be not just done; it must also be seen to be done.
Right.
And many of our trade unions have been complaining about this, particularly at the industrial court. So I think that would have accounted for the cabinet withholding that cabinet note for the appointment of two of the judges there. But this is a matter of concern, general concern. I believe that our judiciary should remain independent, regardless of whether they're specialized or whether they're High Court or Court of Appeal or Magistrates Court. The judiciary should remain independent, and even if cabinet has to appoint them, the person so appointed should uphold the law and should stand for justice.
I agree with you. I mean, there are people who seem to be holding on to certain positions that one has to ask, exactly what do they really stand for. I mean, there seems to be a lack of transparency as to what they represent, and one has to be careful about that. But I want to take you back to last week's first post-cabinet conference, where the Prime Minister made her statements about, don't take her kindness for weakness and what have you. And of course, it is her role to set the tone for her new administration. What was your takeaway from that? And if any tone was set at all, what was it?
So yes, a tone was set, and it was obvious, it was very, very clear to all and sundry that this is a no-nonsense Prime Minister. And she's not going to hesitate to chastise her members, her MPs, her members of cabinet, her senators, whoever she appoints, members of boards which are yet to come. She's not going to hesitate to chastise them. She also let them know in not so many words that this is not a place for unjust enrichment. So that if you're receiving a transportation allowance and a housing allowance, then you're not entitled to, to a driver, vehicle, a house. You use your transportation and housing allowance for that. So you can't have your housing allowance and then expect the government to pay for a house in Port of Spain. She was very, very clear about these benefits, and these benefits are clearly outlined in the Salaries Review Commission. So they would be, I believe, accepting. The former government already accepted it. They have to honor that decision to accept the Salaries Review Commission recommendations for the increase for public officers. But the point is that this was a Prime Minister who was all about business. In addition to that, she outlined the really frightening state of the economy and the Treasury, which was some $11 billion in deficit. But she did offer a glimmer of hope, yes, more than a ray of hope, that she's going to try to to honor promises to the trade unions for salaries increases, to other sectors that they made promises to, the laptop, for example, the laptop for the school kids. So she's going to try, and I think the way she's trying to do it is to generate revenue. So she has to bridge that gap with the deficit in order to bring in more revenue, reduce that expenditure, and be able to meet some of these promises in the short run. The salaries and wages, I think she's looking to settle that in the short run, because that was really a very, very volatile situation with salaries not being properly addressed since 2014. I can speak to that as a trade union leader myself. And those that settle for 2 and 2 maybe also be expecting to get what the others are getting. So she may have to do some retroactive payments as well for those that settle, because generally you want to equalize so that one sector would not be disadvantaged.
So true. Yeah, even at that press conference, she scolded one of the journalists. She said, "Listen, I'm not buffing you, but I think it's a bit unfair that you would ask me certain questions when in fact the former administration had such a good honeymoon period, a long honeymoon period with the media." And that's something I would like to discuss with you about. When you look at it, there were so many questions and narratives being bandied about as to why is she not in Port of Spain. It was cleared up based on the fact of the working conditions at Whitehall. And then she made it clear, listen, I can work not just in Port of Spain. I have space at my home. When I was in administration, we also set up space in central Trinidad. We also set up space in Tobago. We can work there. And it seems as though the media still wants to have this sort of control of her government, the narrative of her government, and she's making it quite clear, not this time around. I just want to take you back, of course, to when we had Tropical Storm Brett, just to remind the people, when the opposition, of course, was responding, when criticized by the opposition for not responding to citizens' cry for help in the aftermath of that Tropical Storm Brett, Prime Minister then, Dr. Keith Rowley, said that he was busy working in Tobago. And during a tour of communities in the Penal DB Regional Corporation, it was Rowley said his information suggested that Tobago would have suffered the brunt of the storm, when in fact it was really places like Penal and what have you. Now, when asked by a journalist about his whereabouts over the past 3 days, his reply was, "You sounded like my wife." And, at that time, the media just simply took these things, and there are many other statements that he would have made that the media just simply took it, accepted it, and moved on. And I think we're seeing with the new Prime Minister, listen, I'm on to your tricks, I'm on to what you always try to, create some sort of problem with me, and I'm just not having it, not this time around. What say you?
Yes, a very bold and brave Prime Minister we have here. This is today's Mother's Day. This is what we can say the mother of the nation is coming forward, informing these journalists that you didn't give me an easy ride in opposition, and it looks like you don't want to give me a fair chance in governance and government. And while I believe in a free and fair media, I also think that they have to be realistic. If a government has been 1 week in power, you can't expect promises to be fulfilled. And I think the PSA president put it very nicely. I saw a comment from her that she made promises, yes, but she didn't say that she's going to be able to fulfill that the day after she comes in or the week after she comes in. They had to do this comprehensive assessment of the treasury, of the economy, which they did. I think that I found rather impressive that they were able to do that in a week's time, to get so much information on income and expenditure, which was never forthcoming from the last administration. There was so many gaps, so many pieces of information that were missing about the treasury. So we never knew. 1 minute the minister would say we're in a good place, Minister of Finance. The Prime Minister would say ban your belly. And so they were going back and forth, and nobody had a clue as to what was going on. And what was actually going on was heavy overspending. So expenditure exceeded income by $11 billion. And I don't know if that includes the error in that Auditor General's report. And we don't know know what happened to that 2.6 billion at this point. I also want to know what is the agreement with Dragon Gas. I keep saying this in your program, Mikee. What it is that they're so obsessed with this Dragon Gas, and the U.S. government's now actually revoked that OFAC license that they gave for Trinidad and Tobago to deal with Venezuela. Keep in mind that the Venezuelan president has a reputation as a dictator. And our Prime Minister, current Prime Minister, is on record as opposition leaders heavily criticizing his dictatorial role, his dictatorial stance in governance. So there are lots of interesting things. She also mentioned, which I thought was welcome, the ways by which she's going to try to generate income, and that is by expanding the energy sector into exploring Grenada, Suriname, and Guyana. She's been criticized for talking about Grenada and Suriname because they're bent on, the opposition seems bent on Dragon Gas, and I don't know why. I'm not talking about the current opposition. But the sky's the limit, and when you are in this state, when the economy is in this state, and you just had the economist there, a prime minister, a government, a new government has to find ways and means to generate income. So that is the challenge that they are facing, bridging that gap between income and expenditure currently.
And basically, you're echoing the same sentiments by economist Dr. Indira Rampersad, who was on earlier. There was this obsession with the entire Dragon Gas issue. And one has to ask, is there some sort of backlash that we're not hearing about that we can expect sometime in the near future? I mean, it's one thing if someone is to meet you. Let's just say an average person was to meet you and say, Dr. Rampersad, what am I to say to you? Am I supposed to greet you with congratulations or condolences? I mean, you would be a bit worried. Now, when the United States Secretary of State would address you like that, you will be very much concerned, because this is someone who has the highest level of, security clearance. I mean, when he has security briefings, he calls names. He can tell you the names of the people who are perhaps shipping cocaine from the Cali cartel in Mexico. He can give you the names of people who are interacting with certain things. So it means that his intelligence gathering is very much on point. Are we good? Is there some sort of feeling that many people are saying that there's some unexpected backlash, geopolitical backlash, that we are yet to face that could be coming?
Well, yes, and at the risk of seeming speculative, but I will offer an educated guess.
Please do, yes.
Yes, so that's the most I can do, is that, it goes back some ways, Mikee, with Dr. Rowley putting his youngest minister, 49 years old, to replace him as prime minister when he announced his resignation. And that everyone was surprised at. And then that minister was also the Minister of Energy, who is now still coming back, even though he's been ousted as prime minister, and his party's lost the election. He's just an MP, but still coming back and insisting on Dragon Gas, as if he wanted to dictate to this prime minister what she should do. So one becomes highly suspicious, I have to say, because I still want to see the terms and conditions of that agreement. As an attorney at law, which I am also, I want to see the terms and conditions of that agreement, the Dragon Gas, and this government should really expose it. What exactly happened, and why would Marco Rubio, Secretary of State of the U.S., make this rather strange statement to the then Prime Minister, former Prime Minister? Should I offer congratulations or condolences? That is a loaded statement coming from a U.S. Secretary of State. So the current Prime Minister, also has to reveal a lot of information. We saw things emerging out of the Prime Minister's residence. We saw baskets or caskets or boxes of alcohol there. And it seemed alcohol for consumption, And they were accusing her of being a drunk. And all kinds of names, but one wonders who are actually drinking that alcohol, consuming that alcohol, imbibing that alcohol in the Prime Minister's office, and when were they doing that? So a lot of things are going to come out, which will require a lot of answers. Dr. Rowley's gone his way, peeps his head in and out, to make a very critical statement about the government. But he's really out. I mean, he's one. I think everybody is blaming him for the fiasco that happened to the PNM on election night. And there are many supporters of the PNM that are very, very unhappy by how they were governing and how they were treating people, including PNM members. So they have to now start rebuilding a party, reflecting with some of these players still there.
Yeah,
Some
you're
of
right.
these poll seats.
You're right, and then you have the opposition leader, who is, of course, Penelope Beckles, who is saying that she's not just simply going to object for objecting's sake. There has to be a strong opposition, and I believe so. In order for us to have a healthy democracy, we must have a strong government along with a very strong opposition for checks and balances, accountability, and transparency. But if the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing, because here it is, you have Mr. Young calling a press conference. Who authorized this press conference? Did he communicate with his the opposition leader, Ms. Beckles, before making arrangements for this press conference? We see where he entered the room before she was sworn in, and he didn't even acknowledge her. So all of these things are playing out in the public domain from a political party that always seem to pride themselves not to air their dirty linen in public. Now, it's going to be quite a challenge, because now you have accusations flying left, right, and center about some of the actions of ministers, although it wasn't mentioned in names by Dr. Rowley. But in his posting, when he replied to Dr. Amory Brown, he did mention, of course, young girls and the behavior and what have you. I mean, we're at a very strange point in our democracy at this time.
Yes, so, now the dirty linen being washed in public, a lot of it that was being suppressed before. So it's going to be interesting, because Penny Beckles is now the official opposition leader. She has the say as far as opposition leadership goes. But there has to be an internal election, and that is forthcoming for a political leader. It would be interesting to see whether they're going for a different political leader from the opposition leader, which had messed them up before during this past election. Whether the opposition leaders, well, of course it's an election, so if she throws her hat in the ring, she has to run and compete with the others. So the results of that would be very interesting. I agree with you. We need a strong, resilient, and healthy opposition for our democracy to survive. But they're 12. 13 of them.
13,
there are 13 of them, and they have 6 senators. My concern is some of the old guard is still there, right? And there are all kinds of issues surrounding them. So, for example, the MP for Digo Martin Central, is it, Mr. Colin Edward? Yes. And he was the one, they took a very, very condescending, derogatory approach to the trade unions. They were very anti-union. He was Minister of Finance, and he's back there just as an MP. Whether they are going to let her run the party as opposition leader, to run the opposition as opposition leader, whether these strong men are going to try to, give her a very hard time, as most women face when they have to deal with men in these positions of authority. She's well liked, well respected, but I think there's an uphill battle for her, having to deal with these men under her. And not only men, but some women who are part of the old guard. So there's not much new there for her. There's not much new, except, and that's left to be seen, those 6 she would name as the opposition senators.
Yeah, and of course, there are some names being bandied about, even former UNC individuals who say that they have no problem with serving within the PNM now. So all of these things to look at. Now, go ahead.
They will have no problem serving because they have nowhere else to go. And one also have to be careful of grasshoppers. I've said this publicly, that what do grasshoppers really stand for if, when you don't get what you want, you jump to another party? What do you really stand for? What is your worldview? What is your philosophy? Where is your integrity? What do you stand for? And do party leaders want people like that around them? Can they trust those persons? And the issue of trust is a critical one when it comes to who you have in the Senate and who you have in the House. right? Because a lot of things come to a vote there. You might sometimes need a simple majority, sometimes a special majority, and therefore that issue of trust and the doctrine of collective responsibility will kick in. You are expected to support your party. That is an unwritten doctrine of collective responsibility which guides our parliamentary democracy.
All right. Before we close up, I mean, it's been a few days. We've heard the Prime Minister. She's set the tone, no nonsense. She's making it quite clear that, Minister, she's even talking about capping on the vehicles, because that in itself has been an issue. And if it is that you need to have your private residence in Port of Spain, you'll have to pay it out of your own pocket because you have an allowance. So these are some things that we're hearing that she has put in place to make sure that the hemorrhaging of the finance, of course, is put to a halt, or at least it slows down. Now, taking all of that into consideration, what is expected of the citizens? I mean, going into this, having to be patient. At least we're not hearing this talk about tighten your belt, but we're hearing from someone who's saying, listen, we have to do it. And we have to find the money. We have to get it done. What should citizens understand their role during this period?
So the citizens, I think, has breathed a sigh of relief. You know, a lot of people told me this post-election, that the air feels lighter, that they feel they can breathe. They were feeling as if they were under the whip, they were being suppressed. The crime, the economy, the property tax, the forex crisis, all these things are weighing on them. So their expectations are very high. Okay, we expect that a population, when a government changes, the expectations are extremely high. What is expected is that one would expect that the population be reasonable in their expectations. Reasonable, especially in terms of the time frame in which they expect change. You know, so some things can be done in the short run, some things in the medium term, and some things might take the longer term. The government has 5 years to do a lot, and they will have to prioritize. All prudent governments will prioritize in order of importance, and they do this both for domestic policy and for foreign policy. They have to put their priorities in order. And they would have to determine that based on their promises, based on the manifesto, based on the needs of the country and the needs of the citizens. So my advice to the population is give them a little chance to sort things out, get things in order. They've just gotten, they need to settle down. And then before start criticizing, look forward to see and let us properly analyze and assess their achievements, their successes, and their failures.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Do enjoy the rest of your evening and your Mother's Day. And of course, we'll be speaking again in the very near future.
Thank you very much for having me. You're most welcome.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.